Welcome to today's investment briefing. Look, as financial analysts, you're constantly scanning the horizon for that next massive paradigm shift, right? Well, today we are unpacking a monumental intersection happening literally right now between artificial intelligence and quantum computing. For those of you tracking the relentless pace of computing breakthroughs, you already know we're hitting a classical computing ceiling. To really understand what comes next, think of classical computing like having to read every single book in a massive library one by one just to find a specific answer. Quantum computing, leveraging the actual principles of quantum mechanics, is like reading every single book in that entire library simultaneously. It's a complete, fundamental rewiring of what's mathematically and commercially possible. Today, we're dissecting a very specific recent briefing that signals this technology is finally moving out of the research lab and straight into the scalable enterprise space.
D-Wave CEO on quantum computing's ChatGPT moment, Nvidia, and more. I really want to zero in on that exact phrase, ChatGPT moment. We all remember exactly what that meant for generative AI, right? It was that precise inflection point where a technology that felt completely opaque, kind of confined to academic papers, suddenly became tangible, scalable, and honestly impossible for the market to ignore. By using this phrase, industry leadership is clearly signaling that quantum computing is no longer just a theoretical physics experiment. No, it's hitting a critical breakthrough threshold where practical, commercial application is absolutely imminent. When executives start comparing current quantum progress to the ChatGPT breakthrough, it tells the market that the long-term scalability of quantum models is gearing up to finally eclipse the limitations of our current classical systems. Basically, we're transitioning from the R&D phase into an era of rapid, disruptive, and highly lucrative commercial scalability.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, Key Interview Players and Platforms.
To really evaluate the long-term revenue potential here, we have to look at the architecture of the conversation itself. We've got the interviewee, Alan Baratz, the president and CEO of D-Wave Quantum. Baratz represents that pure executive-level perspective, right from the front lines of hardware and software integration. Then, as the interviewer, we have Brian Sozzi, executive editor for Yahoo Finance. Now, the significance of this pairing is actually profound. D-Wave isn't pitching their milestones to some niche engineering forum. They are translating their breakthroughs directly for capital markets. This signals to enterprise leaders and institutional investors that early adoption is no longer just a science project. It's a massive competitive advantage. Companies that start integrating quantum algorithms into their logistics or, say, drug discovery pipelines today, they are building a technological moat that late adopters simply won't be able to cross once full commercialization hits.
Moving right along to Section 2, the financial context. We have two major players to discuss, D-Wave Quantum, trading under QBTS, and Nvidia, trading under NVDA. This explicitly links emerging quantum architecture right to active financial markets and strategic corporate partnerships. Now, Nvidia has obviously been the bedrock of the AI hardware revolution, but what's absolutely crucial to understand here is how Nvidia's massive GPU clusters are actively accelerating current quantum software development. Developers are literally using Nvidia's classical superchips to simulate quantum environments, which vastly speeds up the creation of the quantum algorithms that D-Wave will eventually run on pure quantum hardware. Now, as analysts, you've got to weigh this against key market risks, right? Pure quantum hardware requires massive capital expenditure, highly specialized cooling infrastructure, and frankly, the timeline for widespread commercial viability remains volatile. However, these strategic corporate partnerships between traditional AI titans and emerging quantum pioneers, they are significantly de-risking the space for early investors.
Which brings us to Section 3, AI models meet quantum.
The core of the discussion between these leaders really centered on NVIDIA's artificial intelligence models being used for quantum computing and the broader future of the industry. This is where we have to contrast emerging capabilities with our current limitations. Look, today's AI models require immense energy consumption and massive linear compute power just to train. They're incredibly powerful, sure, but they are severely resource-heavy. Quantum computing, on the other hand, has the potential to optimize those massive data sets exponentially faster, and get this, using a fraction of the energy at scale. The current business workflow actually integrates these tools by using today's AI to essentially unlock tomorrow's quantum hardware. For businesses looking to establish a foothold, the specific steps for pilot programs begin right now. Enterprises should be actively identifying their most complex optimization bottlenecks, think global supply chain routing or financial portfolio risk analysis, and securing cloud access to quantum emulators via platforms like AWS or Azure. That way, they can start testing hybrid classical quantum algorithms today.
The powerful convergence of AI models and quantum computing, Honestly, this is the foundation of the next decade of enterprise technology. What we're summarizing here is a potential disruption to existing cloud and traditional computing infrastructure that is really hard to overstate. Data centers that currently rely entirely on classical silicon architecture might soon find themselves completely obsolete for high-level enterprise processing. It's a real risk. As AI models become increasingly complex, the classical hardware running them will eventually hit a physical wall. By converging AI software with quantum processing capabilities, the industry is preparing for a massive infrastructure shift. For anyone evaluating early market adoption, understanding that these two fields are actively merging to solve each other's scaling limitations is the definitive takeaway.
Will AI models be the key to unlocking quantum computing's future? Well, the executive leadership in this space is clearly betting on it. They are framing this ChatGPT moment not as some isolated breakthrough, but as a deeply collaborative leap forward engineered by artificial intelligence. As we wrap up this investment briefing, I really want you to consider your own strategic positioning. Yes, the timelines might hold some volatility, but the marriage of AI software and quantum hardware represents arguably the most critical technological convergence of the century. Keep a very close watch on these corporate partnerships, monitor the capital expenditure flows, and ask yourself, are the portfolios you manage truly prepared for the monumental shift ahead? Thanks so much for joining me.